Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Any problems connecting or anything?
No, no.
Good.
I just want to make it full. Okay, I'm full. And can you hear me okay?
Oh, perfectly. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm just going to turn it up a wee bit.
Joy, just and also just so I can remember or not make the flub and say your last name wrong, I would say askew as in I'm going to ask you questions,
Right.
but as opposed to askew or some I don't know.
Well, either way, askew or askew.
Okay, I'm so glad you say that because I get to do something that I do on some occasion, which is I say no. You in your family, mom was like would well this often works for the first name of somebody if there's they want to be accommodating, so they'll say whichever way, but I want to know what's the way at home you were when you were brought up.
Oh,
That's
when I was brought up in England, it's definitely askew.
ask you. Okay.
Because askew is it's still not a common name, but it was known in England. It was a known name, whereas here
Sure.
it's a very uncommon surname, even though there are Askews. Um, so,
Oh,
so the minute somebody, I think it was Laurie Anderson, called me Askew because it's spelt the same way as the word. So I felt that was really great because it's like
right.
a
Oh, I see. So it's Lord.
juxtaposition
I should.
between the joy askew, you know. So I just
Right.
thought it was
I should
kind
have
of
checked with Laurie Anderson. Is the lesson I take from this? I should have.
right.
When
So,
in doubt, just ask Laurie Anderson.
but I think an English person would always say Askew because it is a known name. You know, there
Mm-hmm.
was a Lord Askew. There's a Lord Askew Arms in Shepherd's Bush, and blah blah. You know, they come from the west of England.
Should I call you Lady Askew then? Is that
Not me.
so? Wait, I I was under the I guess the misunderstanding that you were brought up on Staten Island. Well, I guess I'm wrong. I'm
Now,
just kidding.
I was going to say, where did you get that from?
Bad research. No, I'm kidding. Of course, I know. Well, I there's something really wrong here because which is kind of why I approached you. I don't know if you have any memory of this because you meet a lot of people when you're a live performer like you are, touring over the many decades of all around the world, I'm guessing, or most of the world. Um, and so, but I approached you at a gig of yours up at the Loft at City Winery last year at
Okay.
some point
Yeah.
with James Maddock, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching you, and thank goodness I got to see your set. And I'm like, how in the world have I not been seeing you? I mean, I would have seen you every time you performed live in New York if I had known. But I just don't know
Oh.
how I missed you. Like, I'm willing to admit it. It's a flaw. It's me because I should have known by all intents and purposes about you and your career much more than I bet but look, better late than never.
Well, let me ask you this. How did you know about James Maddock?
Well, I worked at Sony Music back in the mid 90s to mid aughts, and he had at least one album under a different
Right.
musical act name called Wood. And I got in advance of that and I put it on. I was, oh my God, I could see I knew all of his, uh, what's the word? His, the, his, who had made an impression on him artistically. I could hear it
Right.
in that
Right.
early
Yeah.
album,
Where he'd come from.
from
So,
his
so
songwriting.
okay. So that wasn't quite because I was going to say, and incidentally, I played on that album, and that's how I met him.
Oh, okay.
Because somebody from Sony Was it Sony?
Columbia, was he on Columbia or Epic, or he must have been on
I
one of
think
those two?
so. I think he was on Columbia. But anyway, they called me and said, we need a keyboard player kind of immediately. Are you available? And I said, yeah. And they said, would you go down to Philadelphia? And I did for 3 days or 2 days, can't remember, 2 or 3 days, and played on a few of the tracks of the Wood album. So that's how I got to know James. But that wasn't the answer I was looking for. What I was going to say was, yes, Wood, which wasn't under his name, did make some breakthroughs. I think they got some good breakthroughs and people liked them. But when he made, I think his first solo record is James Maddock, WFUV picked him up big time. Do you know WFUV? I can't hear you. I've lost your sound.
Sorry about that. I was trying to change something audio-wise,
Right.
so I would. Yes, of course, WFUV.
Right. Yeah. And if you're in New York at all, for years, especially the end of the 90s, the end of the last century, and the beginning, they had a lot of listeners, and they dealt with singer-songwriter and kind of AAA, and they picked up James big time, and very, very quickly he started to get lines around the block because people had heard him. So that is why you haven't heard of me. I would say.
Okay. Well, interestingly enough, I'm just trying to fix a problem here on the fly. I apologize.
Oh, okay.
There we go. I think that should do it.
Okay. I was having a little audio problem on my end, which I apologize. There we go. I had been aware of him for a long time, but again, I just, for whatever reason, was not getting around to seeing him. I think I'd seen him maybe one other time, but anyway, this just, everything worked out that particular evening. I went.
Right.
And then I got there in time for your set, and I was really just, very moved.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I think I played with him twice there, but I'm not sure which one you went.
How did you meet? How did you guys meet? Was it
on
that album?
I played on the Wood album, yeah.
Okay, so you didn't know each other before that?
No.
Okay.
No, I'd never heard of him. I mean, he even though he's from Leicester, I left England at the very beginning of 1982. So I don't even know whether he was playing then. I'm not sure.
What went into your decision of, I mean, there's a music industry in UK, certainly in Europe. What was the impetus for resettling here?
Relocating.
Don't say a relationship.
Well, I mean, since I got a jazz. I mean, I was kind of raised on jazz, but obviously grew up with pop music. But since I was about 21, I just wanted to be in the States because all I was listening to was Miles Davis and Eric Dolphy and Coltrane and all of this. And the jazz scene in England actually was amazing. It was absolutely amazing in its own way, but it wasn't that. It was almost as if it was something different or an offshoot, but I really felt like the jazz, I was just really listening to nothing but that. And I waited a long time, and I got the opportunity. I was playing in a band, and the guy that I had replaced in that band came up to me, and he'd been in the States, he'd been in New York and LA, and he got a huge deal with Warner Brothers for an album, and they'd made the album, and they needed somebody to play keyboards and sing. And he saw me in his former band, and he said, and that band was popular in London. It was very popular. And he said, would you like to come on tour? And I said, that's it. This is it. So yes. And I said to myself, I'm not going back. I've got to use this as my stepping stone into America.
Well, we know from our generation, I'll say we're from the same generation, essentially, that United States, we here in the States know that England always had an affinity for the blues and R&B.
Yes.
But we don't hear much about the affinity for jazz.
Oh, in England?
American jazz, yeah.
Oh,
like we know that there's a generation of which
right.
It kind of spawned the English
Well, I mean, though, what I was listening to, you know, my favorite record still, I have to say, it's like almost at the top, still is Jack Johnson, Miles Davis's Jack Johnson. And that's John McLaughlin. It's John McLaughlin and Miles Davis.
I see.
And it's oh, I'm forgetting the drummer's name. American drummer, and I believe
Not Max Roach.
No, 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 no. Billy Cobham,
Okay.
Steve Grossman on sax. I think it was all Americans, but John McLaughlin. John McLaughlin. Anybody who knows that album will know that he changed music. John McLaughlin in that album, and he's English. He's from the north of England, like me.
I see.
So,
Wow.
so
Okay.
no, I mean, we very much listen to jazz. I mean, I listen to jazz all the time, and it was all American. But live, I would go down to London constantly, nearly every weekend, and listen to very out stuff. And there was a huge scene happening. And it was very exciting to me also because England, I guess, was affiliated with South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
We would get the South African musicians coming in, and I ended up with a band with a South African drummer, and the horn players were fantastic, just incredible. And that is different from American jazz as well. It all has its different flavors.
Oh yeah, but now I'm beginning to sort of see what led to this album, which is,
well, yeah.
I mean, which is interesting because you bring, isn't this is the one, right, where you bring in the brass instruments, right?
Right, but that's a totally different thing.
I
So
understand.
I grew up in the north of England, and one of the big sounds that you grow up with, even though the Beatles were happening, the Stones were happening, and then, you know, the blues boom was happening, and then the 70s were happening, runs all the way through. This incredible music change that was happening is that they have these brass bands in England. Now, these are originally from they were colliery bands from the pits, the mines, because we had coal mines. And I think they decided to give the miners were suffering from dreadful lung disease.
Black lung.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
And they felt that if they got their lungs stronger, so, you know, with all brass instruments, and I'm not talking about saxophones or anything like that. I'm talking about, you know, tubas and everything conical.
French horns.
You have to blow, you know, you have to really use your lungs. So that's how they started, and that was in the 1800s. And there's 2 or 3 really famous bands in England, and one of the most notorious is
right.
the word maybe, is the Brighouse in Rastrick. It's such a great name. Those are 2 villages, and the band originally happened out of those 2 villages in Yorkshire, very much in you know, Wuthering Heights territory.
Okay.
And so the tradition is, you know, 150 years old or more at this point. What they're playing is not jazz. It's nothing to do with
Understood.
With brass bands.
No, I'm not even. Yeah, but I'm seeing certain converging.
It's a sound. It's a sound, and I suddenly remembered this sound, and I remembered how evocative it is. It's incredibly evocative. I mean, it can build emotion in your body. And interestingly enough, if anyone's interested, did you see that film that came out about a year ago, 1917?
Yeah, I think I did see that one.
It's the two guys who have to go. They have to get through to the front to deliver.
Yes, of course, and it's yeah. You're just
bit. His friend is dead.
Yeah.
I don't want to ruin it.
Yes.
I think it was a marvelously made movie.
It is. No, of course I did see it.
Camera shot or everything like that. But at the very end, he just climbs up and runs, and that is all brass in the sound, all brass.
So right, and so it gets to your core
like this, right. And it's just the most emotional sound. So I remembered that, and I remembered that, you know, even though all of this amazing music was happening when I was growing up, we also had these constant brass bands playing in the streets, playing around. You knew what they were, you know, and I thought, wow, That would be really amazing to put my songs that I wrote in New York over the last 30 years, have been here, and just smash them together with something else that is deep inside me. It's
I
like
think it would,
smashing together the two parts of me, you know. So
that
that's
could
where that came out of. Sorry.
that could so much have gone off the rails, but it doesn't. It actually works really well.
Oh,
Turns
good.
out.
I'm glad you're saying that. Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that I actually realized once I started mixing it, I thought, you know, I never thought I would really be able to do this. And I got to that point and we were mixing it. And I was actually amazed. I amazed myself. How did I manage it? James Maddock was extremely helpful.
Oh,
Yeah, he loved the concept. He sang on the album. He was the one that suggested I dress up. I wanted to put something different on the cover.
it's very goth.
Right,
Turns
right.
out.
I wanted to put
Look how beautiful you look.
a photograph that I
Yeah.
had found of the north of England in 1957, and it just kind of, it was an amazing photograph, and I was all set to put that on the front, you know, the
Sure.
little girl, which would have been, you know, kind of me in the street. And to me it summed it up, but he said, no, 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 you've got to put yourself, and you go do the Victoria thing. And I said, well, I'm not going to do, I need to look like a punk or something. So we
Yeah.
had a lot of fun. It was good.
Yeah.
Cover.
One thing I mean, I keep going on tangents here, off on tangents, but another impression that I get growing up, observing the UK, is there's an element much more of an, I guess, a loyalty or a tradition, or a focus on tradition, which Americans by almost definition is all about looking forward, or I'm generalizing, or of what's now, and kind of rejecting the past to some degree. It's like, whereas like skiffle and these traditions of that come from the UK, you know, and artists that are still around are actually relevant, whereas we sort of move our um, seasoned performers into this, you know, oldies act, nostalgia act category, with some exceptions. But the UK really seems to have still a foot in tradition, which I always thought was terrific. I don't. Is that
Yeah, I
just a
mean, I
perception?
haven't, maybe I haven't so much been aware of that, but what I will say is when I was recording with the Brig House in Maastricht, which was 2016, there was a huge folk revival in England. So that's what you're talking about. Really big. And that brass band, which is 30-piece strong, was very involved in that because people kept asking them to come and play, but play in that old turn of the century kind of, you know, because
Yes,
that's what
right.
I did not know anything about that. I mean, my personal want to do it was nothing to do with being trendy or catching that wave. I had no idea it was happening because it was very English. It is very English. Yeah, I think possibly you're right. I don't know, but somebody said something very interesting to me when I first arrived here in the States, and I was playing in a band, and the guitar player, who's an amazing guitar player, said to me, he looked up to me, he said, the States has got the groove, but England's got the color.
Hmm.
And I said, you're right, you know. I mean, I came here for the groove. I definitely came here for the rhythm section.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's what, that I'm not a folky because I have to always have that rhythm going. But the color you can see in Radiohead, you can see in obviously the Beatles. It's an amazing. While the Beatles were doing, to me, what is a they were finding every color in the universe. The Beach Boys, who were forward thinking here, but they were writing their songs based on doo-wop.
Was so you came here in the late 70s
no,
or
82,
early 80s?
82, yeah,
82.
yeah.
But right, but you were already playing music and writing music for
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I
since
had
you were
wanted to get here for 8 years at that point. So
Wow.
and I had
Yeah.
a few bands in England, and I wasn't really getting very far, except that one band that I told you I was in that was popular.
Mhm.
But with my own stuff, it just wasn't. Nothing was happening. I came here and met a few people, but immediately I got the Joe Jackson tour that was very big for him, that lasted a year. And then after that, a lot of people were very open to what I was doing.
Did you have a relationship with Jackson before you got here?
No.
Mhm.
I did. We shared a saxophone player, but I mean that's not uncommon in London. That you know different musicians. I mean, we
It's a
knew people.
small
Yeah, but
world.
but I knew his hits, but I didn't really know anything else about him.
Was it you tour with him, right?
Yeah,
Now, was this after Night and Day?
it
Can't
was the
remember.
Night and Day tour. So
It
that
was the
was
Night.
his.
What an
It was his
incredible,
biggest tour. It was amazing,
which
and
really
it
kind of,
lasted a whole year, and we went kind of around a lot of the world.
well, it's an enormous album. It's
Yeah,
I think one of the great albums. I won't say it's underrated because anybody knows and loves music knows that album.
exactly. And it's really stood the test of time. I mean, it's great writing, and just I always feel like he's not fancy with the way that he produces stuff in some ways. He just puts it down, and it still works. It still works because it's not suffering from any strange reverb that might have happened and be tricky
Oh,
at that
right.
time, or like people fall, when you hear stuff from the 80s, it's like, oh God, what was happening?
Yes.
Were their ears okay? But here, it sounds really good, and the
That's
songs really stand the test of time. It's a great album.
Yeah, it isn't synthed up, to the
But the synths on it, and that
yeah.
was so great because that's what I got to play. My Prophet, I came over with a Prophet 5 and Fender Rhodes. We had two Prophet 5s.
What is that like? Is that a
That
five?
was the first. It was the first polyphonic. That's why they called it 5, because you could play 5 notes at once.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Oberheim basically followed very quickly. But prior to that, the most known one was the Moog, the Mini Moog, and you could only play 1 note at a time. So
this was like almost like a piano keyboard in the sense that you could play complicated.
Yes, but it was much shorter than a piano.
Sure. No, I get it.
And it was synthesis.
But you play chords.
It was analog synthesis. Yes, you could play chords and you could play 5 notes at once. So it was
right.
If you wanted just to make it monophonic, you could do that as well. But it was a very big. The Prophet was a very big breakthrough, and 11, 12, 13 years after that, when I did another big tour, I think we had about 4 Prophets on the road then. Even though there was a lot of other stuff, it was a very big analog synth, beautiful sound, and people are still using it.
Did you have when you got to the States in '82, there was seems like it didn't take long for you to find a place in the music world or scene.
Well, that was because of that tour. I mean, I came in '82, but admittedly the band that I came to join had really great connections. They were produced by Gary Katz, who produced famously Steely Dan. So there was a lot of musicians around that I got to meet briefly.
Those guys, by the way, I'm a little north of the city right now. When I saw you in New York, I was still living down there, but I decided to take a little vacation, an extended vacation. I'm in the Hudson Valley, and I'm right near their old haunting grounds because they went to school up here.
Oh yes, right, yeah. So
they have a couple of songs that
that reflect that. Yeah. I was a huge Steely Dan fan, so it was great to meet Donald. Actually, when I did, almost immediately I arrived. But no, it was basically I got here in I think the very beginning of the year, and by May I was rehearsing with Joe Jackson.
The music industry, if I'm recalling, was in a slump, coming out of a slump. Not
Really?
around that time, or still maybe in a slump. The CD revolution, or, the invention
Oh,
of
right.
the
I don't know
compact
anything
disc.
about that because that tour was nothing but
Yeah. Oh no, it was a couple of
the,
years later.
and
Yeah,
the
I think.
first thing that we did was Saturday Night Live. We did uh we did some warm-up shows and then we did Saturday Night Live, and it's been very difficult for me every time I've managed to find that online. They take it down. But I do think I've got hard copies of it. But it was really kind of amazing, that show. The energy was incredible.
Oh, I
That was
bet.
a 1982 Halloween show, and Eddie Murphy was on the show. It was just
Wow.
Michael Palin was the host.
Really?
Yeah, it was.
Did you guys were able to? I mean, all three. I guess Joe. That was Joe.
Yeah, that was Joe
Yeah.
Jackson.
So you and Joe and Michael must have gotten off since you're all from.
I don't know whether I definitely hung out a little bit with Michael Palin. I hung out a little bit with Eddie Murphy. I seem to remember, but then a lot of it was just hanging out. A lot of hanging out in that show. After
So
hanging
you were,
out,
but with Joe, were you doing much vocal stuff?
yeah, a
Okay.
lot of vocal, a lot of keyboards, multiple. We had 6 keyboards between 2 keyboard players, and because MIDI, nothing was MIDI, so you had to kind of run around,
I see.
and that was pretty exciting. And a lot of vocals, a lot of background vocals.
So were you had you when did you finally get to record your first album,
Oh, that
studio album in the States? Because you
yeah,
recorded in the UK before that?
not really. So
Okay.
I recorded an EP that is not known, but it was a great start in 1988.
Really? So all that time you were kind of more supporting and performing
Yeah, I
live.
went Joe, and then I went from Joe to Laurie Anderson, and then we made the movie the next year with Laurie Anderson. So it was just going each year, and then the year after that, Joe had. I think that was the year that he did his classic three-sided
Oh
live
yeah.
digital
Oh yeah.
Big World.
That sounds right.
So
That
I
sounds
did
right. I
that.
got it. I remember being a big
Yeah.
fan. I think I bought that.
And then I was also, uh, I put together my own band. By 86, I was already playing at CBGB's in New York by 86. And I think at that point I had an 11-piece band. But
Not at
yeah, so I
CBGB's.
was playing a lot. Yes,
Yeah.
at CBGB's,
You
yes.
got
Yeah, I have pictures of it.
11 people on the stage.
Yeah, it was great.
And what
um,
year was that? Those late 80s by then, or mid 80s?
86,
80?
86.
Oh, 86.
And then I did record that EP, but what happened was um, I did some other tours with other people, and eventually um, in '92 I went down to Nashville to tour with Rodney Crowell.
That is a departure.
Yeah, well, he was in a departure. I did not know who he was, but somebody said, "Don't worry, he's like the Peter Gabriel of Nashville." That's what they described him. Because I said, I'm not country, I'm not going to know what to do.
Right,
No,
but he
no, no,
was
no.
actually trying to do something
He
other
was
than.
trying to do something different on this record, and he had, used a New York guy to mix some of it, and Larry Klein, who is
Sure.
at the moment
Joni Mitchell.
Joni Mitchell's husband and producer,
Yeah.
had produced and mixed some of it. So it was a beautiful album, and I was very, very happy to go down there and work in that was a big band, because it was a lot of playing, just a lot of getting this rock and roll kind of playing together, a lot of playing, and he was fantastic to work with. But I think it was because I did that tour that I got my playing chops a little more together, that
Well, one thing they
I
do
felt
produce out
capable
of
of.
Nashville.
Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was going to just say Nashville. The bar is high for musicianship.
The bar is very high. It's superb. The musicians in that band were superb. It was just great. It was great fun because the music isn't difficult. You know, I don't think there was a single thing in an odd timing, for instance.
Right.
You know, and it was great fun because they used Rodney would do 2 hours worth of music that I knew, and then half an hour of music I'd never heard before. So, but they used this thing, the number system that they use. I don't know whether you know what that is.
I don't.
And
Yeah.
it's exactly the same as jazz music. So it's that you number the chords.
Okay.
The chords are numbered. But whereas in jazz they would shout, you know, 4, 6 minor, they would shout them out. In Nashville they do this great thing where they put them together, almost like a telephone, and they go 11:44, 11:44, 11:55, 66. And you might not know what the hell that was, but I got it immediately. So they would be shouting, the band would be shouting the chords at me so that I could play.
Amazing.
I mean, this is in front of packed audiences. It was great fun. It was really a great experience. But I think if I hadn't done that for those months that I did and had been playing so much, I would have been too nervous when I got told that I'd been put forward for the Peter Gabriel thing. I might have been too nervous.
The Peter Gabriel thing. Okay.
The tour. So when I came back from there,
well,
I got a call from Tony Levin, who's his bass player, saying that I just recommended for the tour. So it was like one thing led to the other, and then after
now
that,
you might also you had a connection with Laurie, who collaborated with Peter, right? On
I actually album. You know, one time when we were on tour with Laurie, we came down to the hotel lobby and Peter was there. And that's when I remember meeting him for the first time. And of course they were friends because they'd recorded something that we would play every night on stage. Yeah.
Right.
So yes. So, and then it was after the Peter Gabriel tour that I came back and had written a whole bunch of stuff and made my first album.
So that's an interesting time. By the way, I think I was conflating because actually Kate Bush, another compatriot of yours, I guess, she recorded with Peter on So. Yeah. And when I saw him on that tour in New York, he was actually touring with Laurie, who sang that part. Interestingly.
Really?
Yeah, she did.
About that.
Don't Give Up. I think she did Don't Give Up. I was just going to ask you about this period of time when of coming from this jazz passion for jazz and then evolving into you know, more of a singer-songwriter. This sounds like the Crowell thing might have been, and Peter Gabriel might have had a real.
No, I mean, I used to get very annoyed about the term singer-songwriter because
I use it as shorthand, so forgive me.
No, I'm not. I use it now.
You're no longer defensive about it.
But I have to say that in the 80s, the late 80s, when they coined the phrase, you know, I used to say, well, what are you going to call? You can't call Jimi Hendrix a singer-songwriter. You can't call Peter Gabriel a singer-songwriter because he's not standing there with a guitar singing, because that's what they were coining it about.
Well, you think of Paul Simon.
Yeah. Well, but he did not have that at the beginning.
No.
But it more came through Suzanne Vega, I think.
Oh, maybe Tracy Chapman, those guys.
Yes, exactly. And so the difference is that when I grew up, and particularly Hendrix and someone like Peter Gabriel and also Tom York, for instance, from Radiohead. Let's pick loads of different people. I think that the intent is very different. The intent is not somebody who sits with one instrument, even though all of those people probably write like that. But that's not what they're hearing when they write. Now, I can't be honest because I don't know what they're, but to me, that the Beatles were not singer-songwriters.
Right.
They changed sound. Full stop.
Absolutely true. Right.
And then let's continue from there.
I use the term almost like as a Well, you know what? It's the same thing with being called a folk music. It's like a shorthand descriptive, which really is, or even R&B. it's the music industry.
Yeah, they like to put things in pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what makes kind of doing something different really difficult. Like once you're,
I would say that I was never a singer-songwriter. I was always a band person.
right.
And then things change, and I mean, I had no idea about lyrics, I would say, right through till, I mean, I like my first album that came out in 1996, but I feel that the lyrics on a couple of the songs, yes, that one,
This is a beautiful album, so I'm gonna have to.
The lyrics are like, because the lyrics I was much more of a musician, and somebody who was interested in sound. And I think that nearly all of the jazz that I listen to incessantly is instrumental. So I think that's why. And then more recently, I started to become much more interested in lyrics. And now I listen to a lot of just lyric-driven stuff, which I like a lot. And I think that that's gone into my writing much more. So it's just an interesting, that one. That's still from like 9 years ago or something. 10
Oh yeah, I know.
But
look at that.
Oh, I signed it for you.
You did. I talked to you and you came over to the bar and you sold me I was happy to buy an album.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great.
I love that. I
bought the Queen Victoria one as well.
Oh yeah, then I bought these other ones for sure. Well, I had already heard them, but I in my doing my due diligence and I have to say, especially in this getting ready for this, I've just been listening to it a lot more and just really just love your vocals, love your style, and I'm not trying to gush or there's certain artists that just I feel are expressing artistically something that goes to right here.
That's great. Thank you. I have been,
I mean, it was just
on a new album that has been begun in 2017, so it's a long time. And I feel now that lyrically I'm in a totally different place, and sonically as well. But it's very, very slow. It's difficult to work on during COVID, but I was hoping that this would be released now, and I'm only halfway through it, so I'm not rushing, but I think that I feel that I can't wait to get this out to the public and finish it. I just need to hurry up.
Well, we'll have to have you back on when that is out, so we can promote it accordingly, but well, I mean, I just want to say, when I was introduced to you last year, the thing that I was first and foremost is the just your vocal performance, and that's just a lot of years singing, right? And but you have these songs which allow you a vocal performance. They give you a way to really express yourself as a vocalist.
That's good.
Yeah.
I sometimes think I don't do that enough, but well, it's interesting because what you would have heard are all the songs that are going to be on the new album.
Oh, so okay, I did hear. I think you may have said that that these are for new, but I think you did also. I remember you doing Queen Victoria, and I was just like, "What?"
Oh, I did that. Okay, yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, and I was just like, "What is this?" And then you did some stuff with James, of course.
Right.
I mean, he's another example of that. It's about. I mean, obviously he's more of the clown prince, and that's of the songwriter set, where he's just gets up there and he's just a ball of unbridled energy, and he knows how to.
I think he's just making almost finished another album.
He's very prolific, we should say.
Made 3 albums in the time that I'm trying to make 2. One.
Well, but that's not the standard speed. He's very prolific.
He's extremely prolific, and he
Yeah,
comes up with these ideas, and
yeah,
it's tremendous. I don't think he ever stops.
yeah.
It's just great. It's fantastic,
Right.
and I've sung on, I think, two or three of his albums fairly recently, and it's always been really good to
Are
go
you
and
doing that from? Are you going into a studio then?
well, yes, because the last one we did was the very end of.
Okay.
I mean, I probably went in January, I think, or February.
Oh, right, right. Days before. Yeah.
Yeah, um, was the last time, but it's a lot of fun. It's great to actually, it's great to sing, and we build up these things sometimes together. So it's just been nice to do that with somebody.
Do you have any other collaborations along those lines, or with other artists? Or
I'm not really. What I feel my collaborations are with are on my songs. I have brass players here, and they're all sending in stuff from their homes.
oh yeah,
I have a couple of electronics guys that I've worked with in the past. One is in Tokyo, the other one is here. They've been sending in stuff very successfully. So I'm having to do it all like that, and I'm about to work with a rhythm section on a new song. Um, so it's exciting and it's different. So at least it's not just me. I'm not just making a record at home. It's like I'm making it all here, but it's all coming in from outside,
I see.
sometimes
So
from the Far East.
you are. Are you saying that you are producing it at home?
Yeah, I always do that with all my records are made. I first got a studio. I went digital in 2000, so all of those records that you've seen have been made and brought back, and it helps save money to do that.
Yeah.
And then
One thing I don't think you've. Sorry.
it gets mixed somewhere else, but
Oh, right. It would make sense. Are you? I haven't seen you. Maybe only because I've just not made a point of it. But are you taking advantage of or trying, or have you been tempted to do something from home like so many artists, or is that just
oh, I did quite a lot at the beginning. Yeah,
at the beginning?
yeah. And then once I started getting stuck into making the album, and then trying to do stuff on Final Cut Pro. I'm kind of learning that for the video. I haven't really had time to do it, but I will. I'll do some more. I'll do some more. I
It's
don't
just
like
also,
the
you
Zoom
know,
sound can be really going live to Facebook actually was good. Going live to Instagram was good. I think it turned out okay, but I did some other stuff for other people, and the sound wasn't great, and I was like, okay, not sure I want to do this.
makes sense. You got to be careful,
Yeah,
right? I imagine because it's out
yeah.
there for good.
But I just found that I didn't have the time to focus on live while I was focusing on just being in my studio and being in that.
Well, it's great news. So it's highly likely that sometime in this calendar year there will be a new album.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really going to step it up, and there will be a performance, so I'll let you know.
I can't wait.
Or several, hopefully.
Well, I'm so grateful for you and responding. I know we had trouble leading up to.
Well, because of COVID, I think.
I don't think. No, we were in touch before that.
Oh,
Just
really?
the weeks leading up to it, in fact, and then then of course it just sort of dropped off. But we were emailing back and forth trying to figure it out, the
Oh, right.
scheduling of it. That's all. But this was just fine, and I'm glad if I introduce your music to even a handful of people would be very good. I'd be very happy.
It's going to be great. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. And as many film people as I bring on, the dark secret, the dirty secret is I love talking to musicians.
Oh, good. Okay.
I have to. In
So,
fact, I'm thinking
are
about it.
you releasing this when?
What would be? I can literally. I don't sit on it for very long, but I can. It doesn't make sense to hold on to it till the album. So maybe unless you have something else happening, which would to kind of peg it to, I would just put it up very shortly, like in the next few days.
Okay. Yeah, I
But
think that'd be best because the new album is more like,
oh,
I think I'm looking
right,
at April now or something like that. So
yeah.
yeah.
But and maybe you share this with James. I'd love to eventually also bring him on. If
Okay.
nobody's busier, but
Yeah,
he's the best promoter of himself than any.
yes, he is. I think he is. Well, it's been great. Thank you so much. And I'm going to sign off because I have to get to my next thing.
Very good.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
And,
Thank
I
you,
will be in
Joy.
touch. Bye.
Okay, but take care.